They say every man has a moment when something inside him finally breaks. A point where patience runs dry and silence turns into resolve. For me, that moment arrived on an ordinary Thursday night. Nothing dramatic, no argument, just the kind of evening that should have been calm, but wasn't. Alyssa, my wife, stood by the kitchen counter, phone in hand, that familiar smirk tugging at her lips, the one she wore when she wanted to get a reaction out of me. We hadn't really been fighting lately, not exactly, just fading. Her warmth had thinned into cold remarks, sharp edges replacing soft words. Our love had become a series of sighs, sarcastic comments, and eye rolls that cut deeper than any shout ever could. That night, she looked up at me, eyes glinting with mischief, and said, "You better start behaving, or my four lips might find somewhere else to go." It was said like a joke, coated in laughter but dripping with venom. I could tell she was testing me, pushing to see how much disrespect I'd tolerate before I snapped. I didn't say a word at first, just stood there, still, watching her smirk slowly fade when she realized I wasn't playing along. I could feel my pulse in my ears, not out of rage, but because something inside me went quiet, calm, final. I took a slow breath, stepped toward her, and said evenly, "If that's how you feel, you can leave." Her face changed instantly. The confidence she wore like armor cracked in an instant. "Wait, what?" she stammered. But I didn't repeat myself. That silence between us said everything, louder than any scream ever could. For a second, she just stood there, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like the script she'd written in her head had suddenly fallen apart. She hadn't expected me to call her bluff. Women like Alyssa rarely do. They grow so used to your patience, your forgiveness, your quiet endurance, that they forget silence can be a full stop, not a pause. Her expression hardened into anger. "You're seriously throwing me out over a joke?" she snapped, her voice trembling somewhere between disbelief and fear. But I didn't take the bait. I'd spent years explaining myself, defending myself, begging for peace. Not this time. It wasn't a joke, I told her calmly. You meant what you said, and I mean what I said. She looked at me like I'd become someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I had. The man who used to plead for her attention was gone. In his place stood someone she could no longer manipulate. She started pacing, muttering threats. How I'd regret it, how I was destroying our marriage. But her words didn't land, because deep down I knew the truth. I hadn't ruined anything. She had. The moment she decided that disrespect was funny, that's when the marriage died, when love turned into leverage. She grabbed her bag, waiting for me to stop her, but I didn't. Not out of ego, out of peace. Because for the first time, I finally understood the difference between loving someone and tolerating them. When the door shut behind her, it wasn't anger that filled me. It was relief. Heavy, quiet, freeing relief. That first night without her was eerily still, the kind of silence that hurts at first, then slowly starts to heal you. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where her shoes always cluttered the floor. Funny how you can live with someone for years and still feel like you never really knew them. She texted later that night, then again the next morning, and the next. At first, the messages were full of anger, accusations, blame, denial. But as the silence stretched on, her tone shifted. The panic crept in. "Can we talk?" Turned into, "Please, I didn't mean it that way." And finally, "I made a mistake." But I didn't need her apology. What I needed was my peace, and I finally found it. Sometimes love doesn't end in chaos or betrayal. Sometimes it ends quietly, in that still moment when you realize that being disrespected slowly kills you far more than being alone ever could. I wasn't heartless. I remembered the good, the laughter, the dreams, the moments that once felt real. But I also remembered the way she looked at me that night, daring me to prove I was still a man worth respecting. So I did. Weeks passed. The text stopped. The silence became familiar, almost comforting. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small or unwanted or uncertain. I felt free. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can say is nothing at all.